Hey everyone, it's Chris here. Due to some of the feedback that I've been getting on the gSender category on the forum and also on the Facebook group, I thought I'd put together a quick video talking about gSender and some of its features and how you can use it. gSender is still in beta, and we only last week released the second version, or the second release version of gSender beta for closed beta. So there's still a lot of features to come, and some things might still move around or change functionality. And obviously there's still some bugs, but I figured it'd be nice for me to just go through everything that we've made so far, if it can help out current beta testing users. So if you click the link through on the email that I sent out for the most recent download, it should take you to this page, and you should get this little window popping up. And so I'm just going to show you how the install happens on a Windows computer and how it opens up as of right now. You see my download finished. You'll get this guy that pops up here. This is just because we still don't have the like security stuff set up properly. So even though it's a relatively secure software to use, you're still going to get this message. Also, before I dive into this video, I'll just remind everyone that since gSender is still in beta testing, you're not supposed to be, I guess, like relying on it on really important stuff. It's kind of like provided as is. So be careful when you're using it, and I would say like don't yet be placing lots of trust that it is going to work for you, even though I feel like it does work pretty well. Anyway, so what you're going to want to do when you hit this screen here is you want to click more info, and then you'll get the option to run it anyways. So now you're going to get an installation window. And by the way, this might be a little bit different based on each computer. I'm using Firefox. So for Firefox, the downloads appear up in this corner. But for Google Chrome, they appear as like a bar on the bottom that you have to open up. And some other people might be running antivirus software or blocking software that might give them some issues in downloading. So you can see it's not instant. There's no loading screen as of right now, so you just kind of like have to wait a little bit, but it'll eventually pop up for you. And this is the opening screen for gSender. If you don't want to lose it, you can always right-click it and pin it. And then that way, if you ended up closing it at any point in time, it's still right down here. So then you can click it again and have it available to you. So I'm just going to full screen it. You can also full screen it like that and show you around. So in gSender, the way things work when you're not connected to the machine is that you still have access to the settings button, which allows you to change a lot of the settings about the program. You still have access to the feedback button, which will bring you through on a feedback link to submit feedback if you found any bugs or have any other comments on gSender during the beta testing stage. And you still have access to the visualizer. So if you'd like to, you can load up a file and load something up like this, and you can go and take a look at it and see how things look for you. If you're wondering how I'm moving around, I'm using the left click to kind of rotate around, and the right click to, I guess, like pan the camera side to side. And you can also scroll in and out if you want to zoom. But if you want to make things easier on yourself, there's also buttons here for this view cube at the bottom corner. So you can just take a look at the top view if you want, scroll out just to see that, the front view, the right view. You can get a 3D view, which is the default view, and there's also a bit of a more hidden button, but this gives you a left view if you want a left view of it on that corner. So these will just highlight to show you which side you clicked on. And obviously we have the y-axis and the x-axis and the z-axis. So this visualizer fully works without being connected, and you get some, I guess, attributes about your file displayed on the bottom part here. So gSender can kind of be split up into two major sections. Most of the stuff that you do happens through the main screen, and this like left side section here is devoted to loading up jobs, visualizing them, seeing their information, and then running jobs. Whereas this right side section here is all the stuff you'd normally do for prep work or work between jobs, such as jogging around, setting your zero, doing probing, running macros, stuff like that. So before I connect to the machine, I'll show you a couple other things about gSender that we've added in, which might be nice for you, depending on who you are or what you're looking for. So if I go into my settings, there's a couple other things that you can toggle in these settings that pertain to the default view of the software. We've got our preferred units here. So if you toggle this, it should change all of the units in the sender to be in inches, and you can toggle it back to millimeters, and that applies also to all of the settings. You can have a reverse workspace layout, and what this does is it actually sticks all of your jogging and your location items to the left side rather than to the right side. And this might be nice because some people might prefer or be used to working with it in this layout. And if you go down to this visualizer tab here, there's also a couple other things that you can do, such as the visualizer has a light theme. If you don't, if your eyes get a little bit strained on the dark theme. And we have also what's called, well, we have these other settings that the idea behind these is to reduce computing power on your computing load onto your device while you're running gSender. And so these are kind of like extra tidbits to the visualizer that you can disable if you want your computer to be able to process files better. Or what we have is what we've called lightweight mode. And so if you'd like, you can toggle this on if you're running an especially large file and would like to ensure that your computer doesn't get especially bogged down on those larger files. So you can see by default, lightweight mode has the bit turned off and the bit animation turned off. But you can also turn off the cut path animation, and if you want, you can turn off visualization altogether. So I'll show you what that looks like. You can see there's a little toggle up here. So normally I have this bit here, and when I run the file, the bit starts spinning to show that it's cutting. If I turn it into lightweight mode, it turns it just into a point. And obviously there's no bit, so there's no spinning. So that helps a little bit reducing the rendering or the processing power on your device. All right, so now let's dive into connecting to the machine. You can see I've got my little connecting box up here kind of flashing at me. And if I hover over it, it's gonna automatically refresh to check what devices might be plugged into my computer. And it's able, it kind of filters out to only be devices that would be, you know, the long mill CNC or other types of hobby CNCs. And so I see there's one here, and so I can just click it, and now I'm connected to it. So now you can see once I'm connected that now I have the ability to actually run the job. I also have access to all of my controls on the side here. And I also have access to things like the wizard. And once we're finished these other gadgets, these will turn white as well so that you have access to those. So I'll cover some more of the basic controls of the machine before showing you how you would run a job. So on this right side here, we have basically everything you would be used to seeing. You can see right now my bits all the way out here. And so if I'd like to, I can zero my X and it'll move to the 0x. I can zero my Y and I can zero my Z. And now I'm at my origin point there. And in addition, you've got the zero all button here, so you can click zero all if you'd like to. And we've got go to buttons. So let's say I were to jog over and jog up, and then I said, oh, take me back to my 0 point. I'll click go to 0, and it brings me back there. And you can also go to each of the axes individually if you wish. In the jog control space, you can see that I've got my normal jog movements, left, right, up, down, and diagonal movements if you'd like to use those, and my up and down and my Z. So we've kind of rethought how jogging works, as opposed to other senders where you're kind of like always toggling around, you know, how much you want to move by, and then making those movements, and then toggling again and making those movements. Instead, we've made what we call jogging preset buttons. And the purpose of these presets are to avoid you having to, you know, click up and down all these values as you're kind of moving around to locate your bit to set the 0, or moving it out of the way once you're done a job. And so the names kind of imply their purpose. The rapid button is meant to move you rapidly out of the way or into the location, the rough location that you want to be running your job. So you can see for rapid, you've got more coarse movements and faster speeds. Normal is kind of more normal movements, and precise is the more exact movements you might make if you want to set your 0 or get closer to your probe. The nice thing about these preset values is, although we have a default value that we put on them, if you go into the settings, you'll see that you have the ability to set these yourself to whatever value you want. And so if I want to set what my normal value is in my XY of 6, or let's say I want to type in 6.5, then that's now saved. And so if I come back out here and I click normal, you'll see it pre-fills it with 6.5. So this is very handy to use because now you don't have to kind of always toggle around. Normally when you're positioning your Sienci, you need a very coarse movement, a normal movement, a fine movement, and that can get you 80 to 90% of the way there. And so you can use these presets. Before I go into this bottom tab, I'm also going to mention that we actually also have the ability to use different work coordinate systems, which we've titled Workspaces. And so these are selectable up here. And so you'll notice that right by default, you're in your G54 workspace. And this is something that's for more advanced users, because most times you'll only ever use G54, and you probably won't ever touch this. But if I were to change over to G55, you'll see that my G55 is in a different place. And so if I were to jog that up and jog it over, and then switch back to G54, you'll see that the G54 has a different offset from your G55 still. And if I were to zero all here, and then went back to my G55, it would be back up here. So they run completely independently. You can do your go-tos, your zeroing, your job running, all of that stuff, and it should be able to always run independently on these workspaces. This bottom corner here is kind of like the remaining, you could call them plugins or whatever you wish, but the remaining functionality is kind of put into here. And the reason it's all down here is because it's not used, you know, a lot of the time, but obviously the probe is most used of all of them, so that's open by default. The way the probing module is set up is it's set up to work with the long mill probe already. And this is actually reflected in the settings. Something you might notice is that for the most part, when it comes to gSender, if there's anything that you might only set up once or twice, or you might only change the value of once or twice, you'll usually find it in the settings. Whereas everything else, which is like you're kind of going for all the time, is always available on the main screen. And so the reason we do that is just to declutter the main screen and it's not too, like, I find that it's convenient to be able to just go in, set these values once, and then now they're kind of hidden back here and I don't have to worry about them anymore. Unfortunately, this is a bug. These values should be filled in. You should find if you run your probe that it should work all right. I think there was a small bug in the code that we might do a release this Friday for, just to patch it. But like, normally these values here are filled up, and we might make some visuals indicating, you know, what's going on here. But this is all the probing settings, and the default values that are normally set for here and the default values that are here indicate the values that work for the long mill touch probe. So you've got your like fast finding, slow finding, and retraction distance. And then you've got your Z thickness, which is the thickness of the plate from the top of the material to where you touch it with your cutting tool. And then you've got the ability to say whether your probe has the ability to do probing in XY or if it can only do Z. So, and if it can do it in XY, then you can specify a thickness in your XY, which is the distance from your material to where your cutting tool touches on the outside of the plate. And then your length and your width, the length is kind of like the depth of the touch plate away from you, and the width is across size. So I'll do a quick demonstration for the long mill touch plate. I'm just doing a screen recording here, but for the touch plate, I know that the thickness in the Z is 15, and the XY thickness, if you measure this, you'll see that it's I believe it's 10 millimeters. I should probably know this. This is a good opportunity to actually just pull up the long mill resources and double check these values, so I'm not giving you the incorrect values. Yeah, we've got 10 millimeter and a 15 millimeter. So I'll open this. We got 10, and then the length of the probe, I believe, is, I think it's around like 50, and it's the same in both axes. So that's kind of your setting up your touch plate movements. And what you've got here for tools is basically when you're using the touch probe section down here, you're going to be able to select what tool you're using, and this makes it easy to kind of switch between primary size tools. And so you can kind of go in and add these in here, whatever size tool you might be using. You can enter it in imperial or metric, but I'll just do, I don't know, add that in. And so now that I've added a 3 millimeter bit, you can see if I come out here and let's say I do the next touch, I've got the 3 millimeter bit here. So that's the whole probing section there. You'll notice that primarily I have the access to select what type of touching I'd like to do. The two most common are the XYZ and the Z. And it'll give you a graphic showing where you can position it, and then you can select what bit you're planning on using. And then you can click probe. And so when you click probe, we have basically this check screen. And the purpose of this check screen is we found that sometimes people over time will not notice that the wire connection has come loose on their touch plate and the circuit has been broken. And so we've kind of made this check screen to mostly protect against that. And this ultimately protects your bits so that you're not starting a probe cycle without first confirming that the circuit can in fact close properly. we're also just wanting to remind you of that you have the correct positioning. So first of all, make sure the tool is positioned correctly, and second of all, go and confirm that the circuit is closed properly. So you'll see it's waiting on probe circuit confirmation. I'll just have to get up and I'll have to close this here. So what you'll be looking to do for this setup is to first move your bit to this location on the touch plate, and then hit this. So you'll be in this position indicated by the graphic, right? Whatever position it is. And then once you're in that position, that's when you hit probe, confirm, okay, I'm in the right position. And if you're not, you can exit out and reposition it. If you confirm you're in this position, then what you want to do is you just go over to your machine. You can grab your touch plate and you just lift it up to the cutting tool and make contact. So that's what happens when you make contact. And you just hold it there for a second. And once it registers as touching, then it now will give you the option to start the probing cycle. And then that'll fully run for you and return back to wherever the starting position is. I'm not going to run it just because I don't have the probe actually set up on my machine. But that's actually, I'll just run it and then abort it. So actually that shows off nicely another one of the features, which is that we have this cancel movement button here, and this can apply to basically any movement. So you can reliably click it, and usually, depending on the type of movement, sometimes it has to do some special commands in order to cancel the movement, which will put the machine into an alarm. But you see now with gSender, if you get an alarm, you have a very clear button to unlock the machine and get your machine back to normal, basically. And so you can see that applies to me, making jog movements. Let's say I've clicked and held it, although for gSender we have it so that you click and hold it, and as soon as you release it stops. But maybe let's say I do a movement 200 and then I want to change my mind, I can click this to abort that movement. And just as well, if I say I want to go to the 0 point, but I change my mind, I can click this to abort it and then just unlock it. Okay, what else have I missed? Okay, there's macros. So macros can be EEPROM changes, they can be G-code that it sends, it can be whatever you want. So I can just say fun, let's say like a G1, Z10, and maybe just like add a G90 in there. So now I should be able to run it. Oh, I didn't specify feed rate, I think. Yeah, there we go. So you can see you get a little running thing. You see a little indication there that it's running. So you can always play on those, or you can go and edit them or delete them. And you can just click this little plus down here if you want to make new ones. Obviously, you've still got your console here. So this is for troubleshooting or maybe more advanced users where you can go in and see the commands that the machine is sending, or send your own commands from here. So I can just send the exact same command from here if I'd like to. Oh. By the way, you can press the up arrow if you want to like cycle through previous commands that you've typed out. Oops. Let's make it like a oh, it looks like I've reached my limit. Well, let's go down instead. There we go. Anyway, Console is something you might not normally touch anymore, and we've kind of hidden it away because for the average user it's not super important, but it's still accessible if you need it. Okay, let's check. Okay, I want to kind of get through the last of the stuff here because I don't want to drag on gSender's features. So let's just go quickly through whatever else I might have missed. We've got the wizard, which isn't really a wizard, it's more of like a firmware setting thing. As of right now, this is more of like a visual way for you to be able to go in and change your EEPROM settings, as opposed to going to the console, typing $$. Oh yeah, this is a bug that we fixed, but normally you type $$, see all your EEPROM, and then change it manually in the console. This is like a more visual way of going in and changing it, and I think it's a bit more user-friendly. This firmware editor is also going to have the ability to flash firmware, load machine defaults and stuff like that. So those are all features that are coming soon. For the time being, you probably don't need to go and explore this stuff that much. In the settings, obviously you have some connection-based settings. You have the ability to kind of select your machine, and we've got a lot of presets in here that you can select, but by default it's obviously the long mill. Most of these don't do a whole lot right now. Most of these values don't do a whole lot, but they'll do more in the future. So you can pretty much ignore it. The only thing that it does do right now is you do have the ability to toggle end stops, for example, and you'll notice in the top right here that you get some extra button functionality that shows up that pertains strictly to if your machine does have end stops, and that basically gives you the ability to do homing as well as move quick movements to the four corners of your machine. You'll also notice that if I toggle on spindle, there's another tab that shows up here. And this gives you buttons to do spindle control outside of running a job, so like more manual controls. And that's another thing that most long mill users don't have on their machine, but if you were using it for other reasons, then now it's accessible to you. So there's also some file validation here, which is I can like turn it on and kind of show you an example of maybe if I can find see here, it's saying, okay, there's one line that may not run properly. So it's kind of like a nice indicator of something that might be there. By default, this is turned off because gWizard is actually programmed to be able to skip over bad lines automatically. And so this is more for, I would say, power users who might be interested in seeing if something is wrong with the G-code file. But for the most time, I would leave this off. And obviously, you've got key bindings. So for key bindings, these are like the key controls that you can set up to do your generic type of actions within gSender. So for example, you've got your jogging. If you're shift and holding right or left or whatever. So you can see that that is already working if I were to do that on my keyboard. And then on top of that, I can go in if I wanted to and change this value by hitting the little edit there. And let's say I thought it should be G, like Control H or Control H. You can see that Control is highlighted, the H is highlighted. It says that shortcut is available. So I could save that change. And now the JogX plus is Control H. Now if I go out here and I hit Control H, I guess it's not working. All right, probably just another bug we gotta work through. But anyway, you have the ability to go through and set these however you wish. So I'll just set it back to what it was before. I think that covers practically everything. So let me just like start from scratch here and show you what it might look like to the average person. in order to set up a job. So I'll just disconnect here. So blank slate, how to get started with gSender. Step 1, connect to your machine. Hover over here, I see my machine is here, and I hit connect. Step 2, I have to position my machine. Maybe let's see what my job looks like first. So I'll stick this job in here. Okay, let's say this looks good. You know, I'm checking it out. I like how this looks. But I need to set my starting point appropriately, right? So I'm just gonna go and position my tool. Obviously, you guys can't see my long mill right now, but I'm going to position the long mill so that it's at the right spot. And that's approximately the right spot, so I'll just zero all there. And then let's say I want to go and do an Xyz probe with the 1/4 inch end mill that I'm going to be using. I can do the probe. Now I'll make contact here. Start my probing cycle. Obviously, this isn't going to work because I don't have the touch plate set up, but that would go and perform the probing for you, and it would set your 0 appropriately. So now we've got our 0 set based off the probe. I can take my probe away, take the probing plate off the workplace and take my magnet off, and now I should be ready to start the job. And so I'm just going to move that up a bit. So now I can go and start the job. So obviously I would have turned the router on before this, but the job is now kind of like fake running. You can see it's following the paths. It's got the coordinates up here. Obviously none of this you can't actually touch any of this while the job's running, because obviously the job is running. If I want, I can look at different views here. And as you can see down here, this bottom section is kind of changed. Let me just pause this so you can hear me a bit better. This bottom section's changed. Instead of showing you kind of more passive attributes about the job, this shows you now more active attributes, such as how long it's been cutting, how much time is remaining, how many lines it's cut, what's your % completion. And you've also got active overrides for feed rate and spindle speed that you can control, or you can stop the job as well. So I'll just resume this. You can see if I wanted to, I could override this, and you can hear the machine slowing down quite a bit. Now it's making a lot of great music. Or let's say I'm like, okay, I want it to go back to normal 100%. I'll just hit the reset back to 100%. And if I were running a spindle, I'd be able to override the spindle as well. So I'm going to stop this job because I don't want it to run to completion. So there you go. And I think that's my initial tutorial of gSender for you guys. If you have any questions, if you have any comments on what you might recommend on a tutorial in the future, so that maybe I can be a little bit more concise with my tour, or maybe answer some of the questions that are a bit more in demand, then just let me know. I'm going to post this guide on the gSender category and repost it on the Facebook group. And so if you can come in and comment on forum post, then just let me know how you found the quick guide on it. And yeah, I hope you guys are enjoying gSender, and I hope you guys are finding it easy to use on your long mills. So yeah, talk to you later.